We welcome you to another live edition of the Sports Box, brought to you by our sponsor, Showcase Sports in Hamilton. Showcase Sports for the elite athlete. And by our friends over at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and check them out at www.crowdplayapp.com for details. Ladies and gentlemen, it's showtime.
Hey everybody, welcome to Cage My IQ. As always, I'm your host, D-Bait. Joining with me today is my co-host, Miles Long. How's it going, Miles?
Doing good. It's been a hot minute since we did this.
I know this is our first show back live since taking a little month or two break in which we were doing pre-recorded episodes for you guys. But now we're back live, ready to get the recap going for this Saturday's UFC Fight Night. Which was headlined by Ryan Spann versus Anthony Smith in the light heavyweight matchup. And as always, before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to the Sports Box. They're the guys that we go live for. So check them out on the Sports Box on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. So check them out. And then also, as always, we are Cage My IQ, the best place for MMA content. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch at the handles to the left. Follow us on YouTube at Fighters First. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the notification button so you don't miss any of the episodes. And don't forget to hit the like button on the video as well. And then let us know what you think of the video. And give us a comment. Let us know what you thought of the fights and who you thought and what you thought is next for Anthony Smith. That's the question that I posted on the comment section, is what is next for Anthony Smith now that he has won, of course. We'll get into that a little bit in the main event. But as a whole, what did you think of this fight night card? Because this is basically the last one before the pay-per-view. This ends the stretch of 7 straight fight nights.
Yeah, I mean, this was surprisingly better than I thought it was going to be. I remember we were going through the cards a while back. We saw this where we're like, this is going to be a weak card, you know? Because it didn't look that exciting. I mean, some of these matchups, you just either didn't know who they were, or it was like, But it was actually more exciting than I thought. We had, 4 knockouts, 2 decisions. And of the 2 decisions, they were pretty one-sided decisions. It wasn't like a close fight by any means. They were pretty exciting to watch. I think not as exciting as week before, where it was, 5 knockouts and 1 decision, or was it 4 and 1? I forget.
I think it was 4 and 1.
4 and 1. That sounds more correct. Yeah, we're like, this one wasn't bad though. This one wasn't bad.
No. I think once you get through the span where you have that many fight nights, people kind of get a little claustrophobic and crazy because they're waiting for that pay-per-view. Because all these fight nights, they usually try and cram like 6 or 7 fights into the main card. Whereas on a pay-per-view, it's only 5. They're stuck on 5, which is a perfect amount for like a pay-per-view. Right. And known that once we get to next week, which is a pretty packed card, that, they try and do the best they can. And I think they've done a good job throughout these fight nights to book some entertaining fights. And it's only going to get better because after next week's pay-per-view, you got 3 more fight nights, but then you got 2 straight pay-per-views.
That's dope.
One in Fight Island, which is packed, and then one in Madison Square Garden that's just it just makes me laugh at how they booked that from the bottom, that bottom card could be like a main event on like a fight night. But they're trying to do it. This is the time where they try and book packed cards to get people watching, especially at Madison Square Garden.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, the pay-per-view cards are always like the big fights that everybody wants to see, the big title matches, all that shit. But I don't know, these past few fight nights, they're like these cards where you just got to have them to move people around and shuffle up the rankings a little bit, get people into the conversation of who might be next for a title shot in some cases. And I mean, this was kind of one of those cards a little bit. Like, you had Anthony Smith, he's sitting at number 6 right now, and he could have lost his spot. Didn't. So I mean, that's a kind of an important matchup. The rest of this card is pretty minor. We had some debuts this card and last card, and over the course of the last 7 weeks, we've seen a lot of movement in the brackets, just kind of below that top 5 and just like kind of on the outskirts of it. A lot of movement below the top 15 as well. But I mean, there's been some fun matchups for sure. I think this card had its charm. So, you know.
Yeah, and then we had a nice battle, which we'll get into on, I believe it's the second fight, where you had a guy get knocked down. If it would have been 5 extra seconds, he probably would have been beat. And then he came back and knocked out his opponent. So, that's what happens. Sometimes time is on your side with these fights. But before we get to action, I just want everybody to check out our apparel site. We're part of Fighters First, but we have merch out now. So all you got to do is go to fightersfirst.shop, scroll down to the Cage My IQ collection, click it, and check out the merch that we have. We have a shirt in 3 different styles, as you see there. Plus, we have a hoodie out now with it being fall in the next week or 2. So if you're the type of person that wants to help us out, buy some of our merch. As you see here, it fits perfectly on us. I love it. I got my shirt here. And of course, Miles always wears his cutoffs.
Oh, yeah.
So he got his. So check it out, buy it, and then also check out everything else on fightersfirst.shop. We got the Art of MMA collection. We just relaunched the Legendary collection with 8 new Legendary shirts, one of them being the Loose Cannon Brian Pillman. So that's awesome to go along with all the other ones that we have. It's a mixture of MMA, boxing, and wrestling shirts. So check them out. Then we got the Brandon Coutinho tune-up crew. As you know, Brandon Coutinho's in glory. So check that out. Just let us know what you think and check it all out. But let's get started with the action that we have here on the fight card. The first fight that we have on here was a banging matchup between Joaquin Buckley, who defeated Antonio Arroyo by 3rd round TKO. This was a middleweight bout. What did you think of this matchup?
Man, with a few adjustments to his approach, I think this fight could have gone very differently for Arroyo if he had just had a better strategy. I think that was the kiss of death here. It's like, he's a big-ass guy for the division. He's actually pretty good. I think he's got the skills. He just hasn't put it all together yet. He is still kind of new to the division, so there is going to be that kind of learning curve that you always seem to have with newer fighters coming into the UFC. But I think this was the coach's fault more than anything, because the coaches, I remember in the commentating, they were saying like, "Oh, don't sleep on his head kicks. Don't sleep on the head kicks." Yeah. And of course, Joaquin Buckley, his last fight, I think he lost because of a head kick. And so I think the coaches saw that. They're like, "Oh, that's how we're gonna beat him. We're gonna beat him with the head kick." And so I think they were pressuring him to use that head kick because that seems to be all he wanted to use. That was it. Like all 3 rounds, Buckley was putting out way more volume than Arroyo because Arroyo was just waiting around. He was waiting for that perfect setup to land the head kick and knock out Buckley. And in the first round, he got kind of close a couple of times. He was slanging those kicks. And if they had connected, it would have hurt like fuck. And a few of those kicks did connect, and you could tell it bothered Buckley. But the problem is that by the second round, Buckley had already kind of figured out what he was doing. And so obviously, having been knocked out the last time by a head kick, in training camp, that's going to be a thing you work on. So he had a countermeasure kind of already ready for that. So that's all he had to do. He just managed Arroyo. And it was pretty easy for him. It was a pretty straightforward strategy. He would be circling to the lead leg, because the further you circle away from the rear leg, which is your offensive kick, the less power it has. And not only that, whenever he would attack, if you noticed, he would actually step and cut to the angle across the outside leg, across the front leg, as he was throwing punches. That way he didn't have to worry about getting caught with that kick as he would come in with his combinations. So that's literally all he had to do, and he just managed Arroyo. And then in the second round, it became really obvious who was putting out more volume just with that one adjustment. That's all he had to do. And then it was like, oh yeah, Arroyo's really not doing anything because he's not seeing that opening. He's not seeing that setup. And that seems to be the only thing he had planned for this fight. And so Buckley just kind of out-volumed him. And in the third round, he just kind of kept that pace going, kept that strategy going. And it was just a matter of time until he managed to clash with that hook uppercut combination. I think the thing that kind of opened the door for that is the fact that Arroyo was falling behind so much in the cards and he knew it. So in the third round, he kind of got desperate and he started going in more with the hands and stuff and started kind of clashing with him a little more. So these guys were starting to kind of do this. And then that's just the result, you know.
He had a couple of chances too. Like he had a couple of he connected on that flying knee, which Buckley, he hit him right in the chin. But Buckley was able to just keep on moving and wound up pushing him into the cage, and that kind of helped him recuperate a little bit. Yeah. And then they said, I think it was the end of the first or beginning of the second, you could hear the coaches telling Buckley, and then the commentators mentioned it, that every time he was going for that right high kick to the head, he would jump up twice, kind of like just jump in the same place. And he was prepping himself. So they were telling him that. So they're like, watch out when he jumps. So he was being ready for that. And you could tell that after getting hit by Tsarukyan in his last fight that he was ready for those kicks, because the first round was 90% kicks by both guys. They were just hitting each other. And then it was a lot of high ones by Arroyo, and then a lot of like lower cat kicks by Buckley, but the side. But as round two start going, you were seeing Arroyo kind of, I wouldn't say back off, but he was kind of taking his time with those leg kicks, and then he was incorporating the knees, whereas Buckley was trying to get his jab going, and then he would circle with the hook. And I think what changed in this fight was just the pace. I felt like Buckley was just pressuring and keeping a high pace, whereas, just like you said, Arroyo was he's being more technical, but he was being more just going with the counter shots, I felt like. And it was just a matter of time. It was crazy because I think Arroyo was coming up and Buckley hit him, and it was kind of like a delayed reaction. And then he felt back, and then that's when Buckley came in with the overhand right. No, it was the overhand left. It kind of missed, but then because he was slow to react, that's where Buckley got him with the uppercut that put him down. And then he just like hammer fist to victory. It was just, they even said it. They're like, in this matchup, with how Arroyo was saying that he needed to get this win, he just wasn't very urgent with it. Whereas Buckley was like, I got to pressure him. At some point, he was making it a point to get inside, because Arroyo did a good job of keeping the distance until that point. And then it was like Buckley was just waiting for the time that he was able to get inside to land that power shot, because that's all he was doing, was throwing those looping power shots majority of the time. Whereas Arroyo was just throwing the leg kicks. He just wasn't putting the volume in, and it was either he was going to get knocked out, or I felt like he was going to lose by decision.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, just looking at the numbers, they tell the whole story. Every single round, Joaquin Buckley absolutely ratios Arroyo. Like, even when we're looking at totals, like total strikes thrown, 44-18 in round one. Like, he's just putting out way more volume. 35-29, a little closer. 28-10. 10 in an entire round. And that was the third round where he looked like he was the most aggressive. But like, he just didn't have the right approach for this. And in the second round, it just fell apart once Buckley made that one adjustment he needed to make, which was cutting to the angle, circling.
And he blocked it, and then you could see Buckley hobbling the rest of the third round, which is why I was surprised he didn't take advantage of it, because afterwards he didn't throw a leg kick at that same spot for a while. Yeah. And I'm like, once you see that, I would have just kept attacking it, because at some point he would have fell down and it would have been on his side, but he just didn't go after it. I don't know if it was because Buckley was still pressuring him, or if he wasn't sure enough that it was going to be okay because he wanted to keep the distance.
Right.
I just thought that was a missed opportunity there.
No, I think that's why I think it comes down to the coaching. I think the coaches kind of pushed that strategy on him because it seems so ingrained. That must have been what they were working on all fight camp, is just nailing those head kicks, getting that timing down, working the kicking range, and then really not rounding out the rest of that strategy to be like, all right, well, what if he manages that? Then what? Because that's what you need to think about. Because obviously Joaquin Buckley lost because of a head kick. He's not going to go in and do it again. That's going to be the first thing his coaches have him working on this next training camp. Is like, all right, let's not get knocked out with a head kick again. Let's work on that.
And his lead trainer, Joaquin Rodriguez, he did a masterful job in his fight.
Oh yeah, great.
Just game planning him. Yeah. He told him, he was like, watch the leg kick. He hops, and then he was just being very vocal, very just speaking to his fighter, and then Joaquin was listening to him. That's what you want. You want that. Even though you can't say anything as a fighter, you want to listen to your coach, and you want your coach to be able to speak to you. Yeah. So they had that going, whereas I feel like on the other side, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the coaches kind of dropped the ball on this one. Yeah. And even if they had a bad strategy in training camp, the time when you see your strategy falling apart in the ring, that's when you're like, all right, I need to start doing better coaching now. I need to start coming up with the solution. But they didn't seem to do that. No. They just seemed to like, nah, stay the course. You'll get them eventually. Like, it just didn't work out. But here's the weird part. I'm looking at the official scorecards. And honestly, I had Buckley all 3 rounds, even without the knockout. Let's say if he had survived and he wasn't knocked out, I had Buckley with the decision taking all 3 rounds. For some reason, all 3 judges gave Arroyo the first round, which, I mean, you could kind of see it because he was slinging those kicks and he had some big moments. But honestly, I think the volume that Buckley put out took the round more so than like 3 or 4 big moments that Arroyo had, and then otherwise nothing. So, but they gave him that one. But I could at least see why bad judging would get you that one. But for some reason, Junichiro Kamijo gave Arroyo the second round too. So he gave him both rounds.
He had that flying knee, but that was it.
That doesn't win you a round. He was getting tuned up the entire round. The other 2 judges at least got that one right. Yeah. That one, they both gave it to Buckley. So
I'll give it to him that second round. That was the big shot, but
that was all he had. Though. He had nothing.
He tried to fly. He tried another one and it missed.
Yeah.
And because Joaquin clinched him up, and then Joaquin was just every now and then him a jab, and then he'd come in left, right, and then he was connecting. The volume was easily him. Yeah, so it's
no question.
There's no way you could go elsewhere, but
apparently if this had gone to the cards, this probably would have been a split decision. Like, that's so fucking weird, but it would have been a split decision. Yeah. How the fuck do you get a split? Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
but he gets the win. He bounces back from that crazy leg kick knockout against Tsarukyan in his last fight. So he gets back on track. This is one of the guys that's very exciting. He's basically, for me, he's almost like he's in that scenario where he reminds me of Phil Hawes, but like I think he's on a better trajectory than him because the knockouts are better. I feel like right now, like he's more like boxing or whatnot, but I feel good about him because a lot of guys come from a loss like that, come back and they're never the same. I feel like he looked a little bit better knowing that he was going up against a guy with that, how tall he was. This guy must have had like 5 more inches on him.
Yeah, he was huge.
But he was able to manage it. The game plan was great. Stay at distance, throw those leg kicks, which I was surprised at how many leg kicks he threw. Mm-hmm. But he did them. He was patient. He didn't just go right in there and try and go for the knockout. He picked his shots, kept on throwing those leg kicks, and then when the time was right, that's when he struck.
Yeah, I mean, this was just a good strategy meets good execution.
And he didn't look tired either. Yeah. Maybe like a little bit, but his gas tank was perfectly fine because he didn't outdo himself early on.
Yeah, no, I think he definitely earned a shot into the upper 30s area because right now he's sitting somewhere. Oh, let me find him. He's below Phil Hawes. I know that. There he is. So he's like, I don't know, lower to mid 30s area ish. So I'd give him a small bump up, have him kind of work his way into the upper 30s a little bit. I'd like to see a matchup with someone like a Jacob Malcone might be interesting. Maybe a Trevin Giles, maybe, because he's the only other guy in that little area that isn't booked up. We got a lot of people in this area who are already booked and spoken for. But Trayvon and Giles, Jacob
Malcone would be a good matchup because he has that wrestling style, and then he trains, of course, with Robert Whitaker. So it would present a different challenge for him.
No, for sure.
But let's move on to the second fight on the card. We have a men's bantamweight matchup that saw Nate Maness defeat Tony Gravely by second round TKO. And this was a crazy matchup in itself. But Nate Maness moves to 14-1, 3-0 in the UFC, whereas Tony Gravely falls to 21-7, 2-2 in the UFC. What did you think of this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, this was a real comeback story. We kind of talked a little bit about it at the beginning, but you had round one going clearly to Gravely, and then round two, Maness managed to pull out a knockout victory, or TKO rather. But, I mean, even from the beginning bell of round one, Gravely was getting the better end of the striking exchanges. He had phenomenal forward pressure, most because he wasn't scared of anything Maness was bringing to the table. Like, his punches didn't seem to be doing anything early in the first round, and Gravely would just kind of walk him down. And when Maness started to build a little bit of momentum, then Gravely did the right thing. He engaged and made it a grappling match. They both got a takedown, one apiece, but that kind of killed off Maness's momentum. And so when they got back to the feet, it was kind of like a reset, right? And Maness kind of had to start from square one to build that momentum up again. He had some good shots towards the end of the round. He was building a little bit of steam, but Gravely got a huge knockdown at the end of the round and just took away any ambiguity as to who won that round. He basically knocked him out, but there was only like 2 seconds left in the round, so the ref didn't call it, and Maness could still stand up, and he was still coherent at the end. So they let the fight continue, but it looked like it was over.
They made the comment right after the minute break that he didn't sit down at all, and he looked lost, like he was still out. And
the coaches were telling him, like, kind of bounce for me a little bit, like bounce on the balls, and he was like, "Fuck that, I'm not doing that." It's like, "Fuck you, you bounce." No, he was in bad shape.
But he did recover, and I felt like he sort of got going in that second round because Gravely tried to go for a takedown. He didn't get it, and then I forget what it was. He got hit. Like, they started moving, throwing at each other, and then Gravely just left himself open, and it was just I believe it was that left overhand shot.
Yeah, it was a counter hook. Yeah. He caught it right as Gravely was throwing his offensive shot. Yeah. He sort of slipped it, but he also kind of killed it a little bit by just kind of blocking it before it could reach its full extension, and then counter left right in the face and sat him right down.
Yeah. And that just caught him. Of course, he fell back, and then Maness just jumped on him and then just finished him. A lot of people are saying that they think that Tony Gravely is too small for the bantamweight division because of the height difference
on
there.
The smaller side. He's 5'5". For bantamweights, usually they average around like 5'7". 5'5" is like a flyweight, but I mean, he did all right. I'm gonna say he
almost won.
Fight. I mean, he could have finished him if he had like 5-10 more seconds in that first round. He's by no means a bad fighter at all.
Oh yeah, he popped him. He had him sitting down right away. It's just that, like I said in the beginning, time was not on his side in the end of the first round because there was only like 3 seconds left, and it gave enough time for Nate Maness to like get back into it. But it was good for Nate Maness to like just his hands are really quick. Like he is going to be a very underrated guy if he can clean up that defense on his striking, because he was getting hit too, but it just seemed like his strikes were getting there faster. I was impressed with his jab. At first, I didn't know it was a jab because of how he was throwing the left-handed jab, but it was just going very fast. He was connecting each time before Gravely was in that second round. He just seemed more urgent, more ready to get connected on his strikes. And I think that's what opened things up for that one shot that he had to knock him down, was just him setting himself up with the quickness, whereas Gravely was a little bit slower because he's just learning to get his striking going because he's more of a wrestler, where Maness is more of a boxer, and you could tell the difference.
Yeah, no, Maness's background apparently is boxing. They were saying that he was a boxer before he started doing MMA and stuff. So his quality of hands, I think, is right where it needs to be for the bantamweight division. I think he's pretty well suited for where he's at, especially given his size and skill level. But I think Gravely also is pretty good. He's a little undersized for the division, sure, like height wise, but he makes up for it with speed and power. The guy's a little mound of muscle. Like, he's got some serious shots behind him. I think all he needs now is a bit of a bounce back match.
Yeah.
And just kind of clean up the divisions between his wrestling and his striking and make it a little bit more harmonious so that everything's nice and integrated. I think maybe something like a Trayvon Jones or Thomas Almeida would help him kind of bounce back from this, because those guys, they lose more than they win at this point.
Yeah.
And we didn't see anything impressive at all from Trayvon Jones in the last fight he was in. So, I mean, I think with Gravely's skill sets, that would be a good kind of tune-up match for him to kind of get his feet back under him, because he did almost win this one. If he had a few more seconds,
he looked good. He had 2 takedowns. He did get taken down himself, but he had 2 of those. He had one submission attempt, which was him trying to defend Maness's one takedown.
Yeah.
So he had that. He had his chances. He had the one knockdown. It's just that he was a little bit slower than Maness with the striking, and then he got hit. That's about it. It happens. You can have a perfect fight, make one mistake, and then you can lose. That's why people watch this sport, because anything can happen.
Right. And I mean, the numbers here are razor thin margins we're talking about. Like, actually, in terms of significant strikes, Gravely threw more than Maness did by about 5 strikes apiece. Total strikes, or total significant strikes, was 68 to 63, and he landed 36 to 31. So I mean, that's as close as it gets. I mean, because you got the total amount of strikes Maness threw, but these include missed shots and shots that really didn't do anything. 98 to 77, which is about average for a bantamweight fight. They're pretty quick, but I mean, the fact that their significant strikes are that close from a guy like Tony Gravely, who's kind of picking up striking as he goes along, has more of the wrestling background, so kind of new to the striking, going up against a boxer and holding his own, almost finishing him off in the first. I think that bodes well for his future in this division. I know there's bigger dudes than him for sure. Like, if you look at Sean O'Malley, he's 5'10". He's huge for the division. Same as who's the other really? Corey Sandhagen's 5'10" as well. 2 huge guys in the division. But most guys are about like 5'7", 5'8" in the bantamweight. So they're only like 2-3 inches taller than him. So he could definitely make up for that by kind of rounding out his skills a little bit, working on his speed a little bit. That would more than make up for the physical like shortness that he's dealing with in this division. I think he'll be fine. At worst case scenario, he could move down to flyweight and be a real fucking force to be reckoned with. So, I mean, definitely, I think he's going to be fine.
Definitely with that wrestling. Like, up until this fight, he was averaging 3-4 takedowns a fight, and then he had one where he had like 6 or 7. Like, getting guys down is not the problem. I think just right now it's his striking defense, which was the case there. But he'll get there. He's working on that striking. It's going to be slow right now compared to a boxer, but I think he'll bounce back and win his next fight.
Yeah, I think for Maness, maybe gets a shot into like the upper 30s, lower 20s. Because right now he's sitting right around like low to mid 30s right about now. And there's some guys ahead of him. There's not a lot of names that I know on here that aren't already called for. Like Davy Grant is in that territory where he's looking to go, but he's already spoken for. Apparently he's got a matchup with Adrian Yanez, which I think is a fucking banger. That's gonna be awesome.
Cage by IQ alumni.
Yeah, that's gonna be dope. But
I'm looking forward to that one.
I think some of these guys who are ahead of him, I think might have like maybe a Nathaniel Wood, or who's the other guy I saw that I was like, Andre Elway. Yeah. Both those guys, I mean, Nathaniel Wood's 4-2, Elway's 4-4. So Elway wins as often as he loses. So I think that might be like a good kind of middle ground. He's got a little bit more experience in the UFC, but he's also like not super crazy impressive. I think it'd be a good challenge to kind of move Maness up into like that upper 30s, lower 20s range. Because then you start getting into guys like Adrian Yanez, Saeed Nurmagomedov. A little bit ahead of them is Montel Jackson. Casey Kenny's at the top of the 20s. So like they're starting to come up on some of these bigger names. But some of these guys in the kind of mid 30s to upper 30s, I don't know who the fuck they are.
But let's move on to the third fight on the card. We had a men's lightweight matchup that saw Arman Tsarukyan defeat Christos Giagos by first round TKO. Tsarukyan moves to 17-2, 4-1 in the UFC, and then Giagos falls to 19-9, 5-5 in the UFC. What did you take from this matchup?
Man, this was a nice short and sweet one from Tsarukyan. He's looking pretty good. And I remember we saw when Tsarukyan kind of bumped up into the lightweight rankings. I think that was mostly because they knocked. Oh, that's right. It was after Paffelder retired, and they kind of moved it around a little bit. Some people moved up, some people moved down, and his name kind of appeared in the bottom 15. Like, I think it was 15 first, and then now it's 14 because Thiago Moises lost. But, like, I remember we saw him, and we're like, I wonder how that guy's going to do. Don't know anything about him. Turns out he's actually pretty fucking good. He's only had 5 fights, but the only time he's lost was against Makhachev. And Makhachev's number 5 now, and he's looking really, really good to take the belt. And he wants a rematch with Makhachev because apparently it was a pretty competitive fight. I haven't seen it, but I do want to check it out now that I know who Tsarukyan is. This was a very short match, and Tsarukyan pretty much dominated the whole thing. He had great forward pressure from the beginning of the first round, and Giagos, I don't know how the fuck you say that. Sounds Greek. Giagos. There's no E in that word. What the fuck? They're lying. They're lying. That's clearly not how you say that. But the one time Giagos got something on Tsarukyan was when he managed to reverse his takedown attempt and kind of get on top of him for a second. Wasn't able to do anything with it because Tsarukyan just kind of worked back to his feet like almost right away. And then once they broke apart, there was a little bit of kind of light back and forth, feeling each other out until Giagos threw a kick to the body. Tsarukyan countered with a huge hook, catching him right on the jaw, sat him down, and just finished him off via TKO. And that was it. Would they finish in like less than 3 minutes? Like it was over almost as soon as it began.
Yeah, I think it was the 30-minute mark.
2 minutes and 9 seconds. 2 minutes and 9 seconds.
Early on, I'll give it to Giagos because early on he was able to get that takedown on him pretty easily, and then he was trying to get going.
I'll give him that. He had a good reversal because what happened was Tsarukyan was trying to go for a double leg, but sometimes in wrestling when you go for the double leg and you don't like blast through like you're supposed, because you're supposed to just kind of blow through the other person. That's how you get it. But instead, what he kind of did is he stalled out a little bit. So he kind of had the hooks. He had the arms around the legs, but he landed kind of on the knees and just kind of stalled out there in front of him like this. And so all Giagos had to do was kind of blow through him and kind of reversed him over. And then he was inside the guard. And he had an opportunity to do some work, but he didn't really do much. He just kind of laid on him for a second. And then Tsarukyan kind of shrimped away, got his back against the wall, walked up, and then he was out. So I was like, he had the one thing, but then he didn't work with it. He had a good opportunity to maybe get in some really needed ground and pound, because before that, he wasn't doing anything to really put him ahead on the cards. Neither guys were. They were kind of feeling each other out. And so he got that takedown. I was like, okay, that's a point for you on the scorecards, but now capitalize. Now, work some of that ground and pound to try to rack up those significant strikes as much as you can. But he just kind of let him go. So I don't know.
And Tsarukyan, he has an interesting background because he's Armenian, of course, with your first name Arman. You would think that he was. And then that's where he's originated from, but he's actually been in Russia, or that's where he trains out of. So he has that wrestling sambo background, but then he also has a kickboxing background. So to me, you don't see much of that combination of the kickboxing and the sambo. You might see like a boxing sambo or like sambo and grappling, but not those two. So it's like you're getting up close, but then when you're striking, you fight from a distance. So it's like, but it works out well for him because, like I said, he only has 2 losses, and one is from Makhachev, who's up there at number 5 there, pressuring for a title shot anytime now. And this is a guy that I could see in that top 15 any day now, because they said for him that this was a fight where he needed that really flashy knockout, and he got a first round knockout out of it. Yeah. So it should be able to move him into that top 15 where you start seeing him fight some good opponents now that can test him, like Makhachev did. But I think that was just like one of those scenarios where if there's one person that could beat a guy with a wrestling sambo background, it's another guy who has that similar background in Makhachev, who learned under Habib. So he was always going to struggle wrestling with that. But I think he's improved his kickboxing, and I think his motives now is to get that rematch.
Yeah. And
I think any guy that gets in his way until then is just going to be chopped liver at this point.
Yeah, no, he's looking really good. He's very powerful for a sambo guy.
Yes.
Here's the thing about sambo. There's 3 basic forms of it in Russia. There's the purely sport sambo, and the delineation happens with like how the rules work. And obviously when you have a difference in rules, you're going to have a difference in strategy to work within the rules, right? So you have like the purely sport sambo, and then you've got like it's more like military / self-defense sambo, and then combat sambo is like kind of in between. It borrows a little bit from both, right? I don't know which one specifically he's from. The most common kind of sambo that you see in the UFC right now has been combat sambo, typically because it borrows from both camps, so it works really well for UFC. But in general, you don't see as much of well-rounded striking in sambo, because really the main feature of sambo that the biggest strength is the wrestling style it brings. And the only thing we have comparable to it here in the States is catch wrestling, which really hasn't gotten that popular. There was a bit of a war between catch wrestling and Brazilian jiu-jitsu back in the early days of before nobody even knew what the fuck UFC was. And Brazilian jiu-jitsu kind of won that battle. So now everybody knows what jiu-jitsu is. Not really many people know about catch wrestling, but it's basically the American version of sambo. Like it's the American response, but we just don't see that many guys with it in the UFC. So these sambo guys are coming in with this very specific flavor of wrestling that integrates the best parts of wrestling and the best parts of jiu-jitsu and kind of makes it one seamless thing. And it's very difficult to deal with unless you know how to deal with it. And not only that, the Tsarukyan guys also got power on top of that. So he's going to be a big problem for this division, because it seems like most of this division, they're either really strong in one and then not so much the other, or they have like a decent approach in both, right? Like, for example, you got Justin Gaethje. He's pretty good at both. He's got the power striking when he needs it. He's not the cleanest striker. He's working on it though, but his wrestling is really good, right? And then you got, on the other hand, Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier's got great hands. His groundwork, there's guys who could definitely beat him in that division very easily. Like, you know what I mean? Gregor Gillespie's another great example. Fantastic wrestling, not the best striker in the division. You know what I mean? but he's got a good kind of mix of both of those things. So I think he called out Dan Hooker. I don't know. I guess that's an okay matchup. I don't know. I think Dan Hooker's pretty big,
And he's fighting this Saturday too.
Yeah, he actually mentioned that. Apparently, Dan Hooker is having trouble getting into the country for that. I don't know where he's at right now.
He said thanks to Twitter that he got his visa, so he's good to go.
Oh, dope. Okay, so he is coming in. But he wants to fight Dan Hooker at some point. Dan Hooker's number 8. Tsarukyan's number 14. I mean, we've seen bigger jumps in the rankings before.
I think the perfect person to fight right now would be Diego Ferreira.
That was my pick, too. I like Diego Ferreira, too. Yeah.
Right there, I believe it's 11 because it's not too far of a jump, but it gets him to that point where if he were to win that, he'd be right outside the top 10. Right. That you can look into fighting Dan Hooker right there because Dan Hooker is fighting Nasrak or however you say his last name. He's not ranked.
Yeah.
So it's not a guy that's going to move him up, or it's only going to move him down if he somehow loses that. But then he could go after him, and it'll be 11-8 there, which is more reasonable.
But he would also have to wait because Hooker's fighting like next week. So he's not going to be able to turn around and fight anytime soon after that. He might, depending on if he doesn't take very much damage in that fight, maybe he can do one more by the end of the year. But that would leave Tsarukyan sitting around for months at this point, just kind of waiting.
Because Faceve is booked. Faceve is booked. Riddell, I believe, is booked. I think.
Gillespie isn't. He is free, but I'd like other matchups with Gillespie.
Yeah.
But Ferreira is kind of the perfect one because he is on a 2-fight losing streak.
Yeah.
So he has to fight down at this point. It doesn't make sense to let him fight up. He has really good jiu-jitsu, but we saw the kind of Gregor Gillespie wrestling versus the Diego Ferreira jiu-jitsu, and he can gas out. He has a weakness even in the thing he's really, really good at. And Tsarukyan seems to have all the things he needs. So it'd be a good challenge to really test him in one area, but also give him the chance to, show off his striking a little bit more, the thing that he should be able to outclass Ferreira in. We'd have an opportunity to see how he does in the hands. Because Ferreira's not bad at the hands, but he isn't as good as Tsarukyan, I don't think. So I think that's kind of the perfect balance of a challenge, but also an opportunity to showcase his skills. And then, the other people in this division are either booked or, they Gillespie just won. It doesn't make any sense to make him fight down because he just won his fight. He should be fighting up. He should probably, I think a good one for Gillespie might be Tony Ferguson because Ferguson's on the way down. Gillespie's on the way up. Maybe have him fight and switch places. Yeah. I don't know. So.
But let's move on to the 4th fight on the card. We have a women's flyweight matchup that saw Ariane Lipski defeat Mandy Bohm by unanimous decision. Lipski moves to 14-7, 3-4 in the UFC, and Mandy Bohm moves to 7-1, 0-1 in the UFC. What did you think of this matchup?
This was a pretty good bounce back for Lipski. Now, I know they were saying that Lipski changed up training camps. She's now working with an American Top Team out in Florida, which we have a lot of big names coming out of American Top Team. It's probably one of the best fighting camps you can go to. And I think the work she's doing with those coaches is really showing in this matchup. Now, granted, Bohm is making her debut, but she's pretty good in the division or in the fight promotion she came from. Was it I forget which one it was. It was one of the smaller ones. Was it that Polish one that I can't pronounce for shit? I can't remember. There's an abbreviation, but I saw the name and I was like, there's no fucking way. There's no fucking way. But they were saying that Lipski used to fight at that Polish promotion, and that's how Bohm knew who she was. So I think that's where she comes from. She seems okay, but she seemed like she was a little bit in over her. Where?
GMC.
Okay, so not the one I'm thinking of then.
GMC, then she did one at TKO. Then she had a fight at Bellator, which she won, and then she came and did this UFC fight.
No shit. Okay, so she's been around, but it definitely looked like she was in over her head with Lipski. And I mean, to be fair, there's lots of fighters who end up having a great UFC career, and then you look back at their debut and they kind of shit the bed. Malcone is a great example of that, right? his debut with Phil Hawes, and he got knocked out in like 10 seconds. And then he came back on his second fight. He did really well. So I don't know. Maybe Bohm will do okay in this division, but she definitely seemed out of her element. Lipski just came in with a ton of forward pressure from the beginning of the first round and was just backing Bohm up this entire fight, basically. Just using her jab, her combinations. Really, her boxing looked really good is what it was. And then, of course, her grappling was also pretty on point tonight. Bohm tried to make a pretty lousy attempt at a takedown, which Lipski reversed pretty well. And she came out on top side control. And then after they got up, it was pretty much just the same story until the end of till the end of the first round. Except when Lipski let her hands go there at the end, she did manage to land some huge shots. It was not quite a knockdown, but it was pretty clear that Bohm was hurt. She was just barely hanging on there at the end. In the second round, Bohm was a little more hesitant because she just took a beating, but Lipski just for that entire round, even after Bohm recovered, just forward pressure and was really just bullying Bohm the whole round. She got a big knockdown at the end of the second, securing her, 2 rounds right there. And then third round was just a lot of the same story. Bohm was a little bit more desperate because she knew she was down 2 rounds, kind of let her hands go a little bit more, but she had taken way too much damage, and I think she was just tired. So she really couldn't put up much of a fight. She was kind of like throwing the hands out there. So even when they would connect, it really wasn't doing anything. Lipski would just keep punching her in the face. Lipski had another big moment, last 2 minutes of the third round, where she sat Bohm down with a really slick combination. It was funny. She hit Bohm, and then for a second, Bohm was like standing there. And then as soon as Lipski advanced to kind of continue the combination, Bohm kind of collapsed. Like she saw her coming. Yeah. She's like, no, she just went the fuck down. But I had this as a 3-round sweep for Lipski. Yeah. No question about it. And I think the judges got this one right. I think they also, all 3 judges had all 3 rounds for Lipski. So there was at least good judging here.
I had picked a Bohm going into this because I thought the one thing that Lipski struggles with mightily, where she can't defend it at all, is the takedown. You can easily take her down, and then when she gets down, she tries to not get up at all. She has no defense, as you saw in the De La Rosa fight. That was the perfect situation where she is really good with the striking. She comes in kind of early and tries to get it going, which she had success against De La Rosa, but then De La Rosa was able to come in, take her down right away, and then it was basically that for the next 2-3 rounds and whatnot. It was just domination, and I felt like maybe Bohm could come in and sneak out a victory that same way, but it just didn't happen. Like you said, she was very, very sloppy with it, and I think that was her downfall, not being able to get the fight into her warehouse, and then it just allowed Lipski to get going and then do what she does best, and that's striking.
Yeah, and I don't know what Mandy Bohm's grappling background was, but there were some questionable things on the ground, like the body triangle from inside the guard. What the fuck was that? Especially when she's getting wailed on. She's like, oh, I know what's gonna fix this. A body triangle. That way I can't escape. That's great. Yeah, that was really helpful. It was kind of like when we were watching Yan Xiaonan, right?
Oh, jeez.
The commentators were like, what the fuck is she doing? None of this is actual grappling. It was kind of like that for a second. But I don't know. I think her main thing, they described her as a kung fu fighter or a kung fu martial artist, which makes me think she's definitely more heavily weighted towards the striking than the grappling. And she's a striker who's picking up grappling as she goes along. I don't know. The good news is there's kind of a steep drop off in terms of competition when it comes to the women's flyweights. It's almost like stratified, right? Like you got the top 15, and that's like the best of the division right there is the top 15. And then below the 15s, you've got 15 to let's say 15 to 29. That's the middle. They're okay. They're mediocre for the division. And then after that 30 spot, the rest of the division is just like not good. Not good. Yeah. Really, Lipski was right on the precipice. She was like right up against that 30 spot between 25 and the 30.
Well, she keeps going from top of the mid-tier to the bottom of the mid-tier, and she just keeps going back and forth because she keeps winning, losing.
Right.
So she stays in that mid-tier, and she can never get out of it or to go into the top tier, but then she never falls out of it to go into the bottom tier. So it's like it's like tough to see who do you put up with her next because she's always going up and down. It's like
I feel like we're probably gonna have a similar story with Mandy Bohm. I feel like that's probably where she's gonna land for a while, especially after this performance. Granted, it's a debut. Granted, UFC jitters is a thing, sure, but I don't see too many people like even Anatolia Shevchenko, the Shevchenko sister. I think could probably be her. And she's like closer to the upper tier of the mediocre fighters. She's like closer to the upper 20s, bottom 15 sort of area. But
because if you look at the bottom of the top 15, that's Martina De La Rosa.
Yeah, she
had her way with her in the last fight, so she's not going to go anything above that.
Yeah,
I don't think she could beat Maverick or Macy Barber, who are 14 and 13.
Yeah,
and then from just there on out, it's just no shot to me.
Exactly. Yeah.
She has to prove herself. She has to get on like a winning streak before I even think of putting her against a top 15 opponent.
No, I think so. And I think Lipski, so she was, like I said, kind of that close to the, 30s area, between 25 and 30 territory. So I think she gets a shot maybe closer to the top of the 20s, maybe bottom of the 15s, somewhere in that territory, like kind of that top of the mediocre fighters. Especially now that I think, she is with American Top Team, which is kind of huge. That is a very good training camp. That's actually where Amanda Nunes trains out of. So she's in great company. And I think as long as
you can catch her every Wednesday on Dynamite now.
Right. So I think if she stays working hard and listening to her coaches and, nose to the grindstone, I think she could, eventually rise up into that top 15. She's got some work to do, but she can do it. The problem is that area that she's shooting for right now is pretty heavily booked up. You've got Anatolia Shevchenko. She's already booked up with Casey O'Neill. Yeah. And then you've got.
I'm looking forward to that.
That should be a good.
That's a name to keep an eye on. Is Casey O'Neill? She's that prospect that I think is going to
7-0 overall record. Not bad.
Not bad at all. And it's 2 fights. She's looked really good.
Yeah, so we've got that already booked up. We've got, of course, Roxanne Modafferi fighting Talia Santos, and that's going to be in next week's prelim card.
It actually just got I think that's the one that got pushed back.
Balls.
I got to look at it, but I think they rescheduled it.
Did they? Hold on.
It's either that one or the other one. I would have to look on.
I've got it right here.
Tapology, but I'm pretty sure it's that.
As I see, it's still.
If you go to Tapology.
Wait, no, it's not. Hold on. Oh yeah, I guess they did move it. Oh, she was replaced by Santos. The Modafferi pairing was previously scheduled for Watterson Rodriguez. But Modafferi pulled out due to a meniscus tear a month before the. Ouch. So I guess
knee injury.
Back again. That sucks. Oh, the meniscus tear. That sucks. Yeah. Which is disappointing. I did kind of want to see that fight. I do like watching Modafferi fight. But then you've also got Mario Bueno Silva. She's booked up with like the upper 20s. Manon Ferriot.
Manon Ferro. And they're fighting this week.
Okay. That sounds like not how you say that name at all, but okay. So like that territory right up until like the bottom of the 50 or the bottom of the 15 to 20 range, that's all pretty much booked up. So I think Lipski's going to have to wait a while. There is Molly McMahon, who is a little bit ahead of her, maybe more towards the mid 20s. She just won though. So I don't know if it's fair to make her fight down like that. I don't know. They might pair it up anyway just to see how she does. She's 4-3 in the UFC right now, so that might be a decent enough matchup to where they're both kind of, they're okay. They're all right. I think Lipski's like 2-3 right now, so that seems like the matchup they might do. But otherwise, they might have to wait till all these other matchups kind of shake out and see who's left standing.
Yep. But let's move on to the co-main event of the evening. We had a light heavyweight matchup that saw Ion Cutelaba defeat Devin Clark by unanimous decision. You had Cutelaba, who moves to 16-6-1 with one contest, whereas Devin Clark falls to 12-6, 6-6 in the UFC. What did you think of this matchup?
Now, this was probably one of the best performances we've seen from Cutelaba so far. He looked really good in this fight. I had this on the scorecards, a 3-round sweep for Cutelaba, no question. And the judges almost got it right. They were very close. We had 2 judges for some reason give Clark the 3rd round. Tony Weeks and Junichiro again. They both gave Clark the 3rd round, but then they did give Cutelaba the first 2, which is why he got a unanimous decision victory. But honestly, I don't really see how they gave Clark even the 3rd round, which is his best round. But man, Cutelaba just smashed him the whole time. And here's the thing: everybody was thinking like, "Oh, Cutelaba is gonna come out, balls to the wall, just fucking throwing everything at him, including the kitchen sink, and just drain out his gas tank in the 1st round," which is usually what he does. That's kind of been his thing. But he was way more collected and way more tactical in this fight. Clark got his takedown early, but it didn't go anywhere. And so Cutelaba was like, okay, cool. And just got right back into the stand-up, put on some great forward pressure, was being patient. He picked his shots. And for a few minutes, the exchanges were pretty even until Cutelaba got that huge knockdown and just followed it up with some beautiful wrestling and ground and pound pretty much for the entire rest of the round. He just was knocking the shit out of Clark. And then when it came to the wrestling, Cutelaba just got that back control position on the feet and just rode the shit out of him and wouldn't let him breathe up until the buzzer. And just kept his controlled pace in the 2nd round. A lot of the same. He secured a takedown early, getting that mount position pretty much right away. Got some great ground and pound in, looked really good on the cards. But even after the ground and pound, we saw some more dominant wrestling, and those knees up against the cage that he was throwing into Clark's face were really taking a toll on him. They were hurting him bad. And, Clark came out wrestling really aggressively in the 3rd round. And this is probably the only reason that I think maybe the judges gave him the 3rd round is because of his wrestling and that the fact that he got kind of a knockdown in the last, 10 seconds or something like that. Because Cutelaba fended him off at the beginning of the round, got in a takedown of his own. Clark worked back to his feet, but then Cutelaba just kind of controlled him a lot. He worked from the back control, took him down, kind of worked the top guard a little bit, got into the top mount. And then after they got back to the feet, Clark got a takedown and he kind of I think it was the knee. I think that's what it was. I think he got a knee to the head and that stunned Cutelaba really bad. And it looked like he might win by TKO, but Cutelaba just kind of wrapped up his legs, pushed him against the cage, worked his way up, and they just kind of wrestled it out for the rest of the round. Yeah. So he held on. But that, even not being his best round, I still don't think that last 10 seconds of a knee and a takedown and then being managed for 15 seconds is enough to steal the entire round. Because otherwise he was getting just ragdolled.
That's the judges right there, where the last thing they see is what they go with half the time. Then they see a knee like that or a knockdown, like, oh, we'll give it to him, because if we're on the fence, we'll give it to the last thing on our mind, which was that. But I always start before this, I had Cutelaba winning it no matter what, even with the usual suspect where he always starts out very aggressive. He puts everything into the first round and then he tires out, because I just think that Devin Clark is a one style fighter with his wrestling. He does really well with that, but it's always his striking that always kills him, because he still has to improve there. You see fights where he can wrestle, and then he'll get a victory here and there just by taking a guy down, but he's never going to take that next step unless he adds something to it. Like Cutelaba kind of just broke out his inner Phil Halls, like we like to say, where you start out using everything like just all right away, and then you tire yourself out. So it's just like in last fight, it was a draw that he had with Jacoby because he just annihilated Dustin Jacoby in the first round, getting like 80 plus strikes, and then wrestling him down. But then afterwards, he just died out, and then that allowed Jacoby to get the draw with him because he won the next 2 rounds. But this time, he took his time, like you said. He picked his spots, and he was able to win the fight that way. Just like you said, the 3rd round could have went either way. I had it going 3-0 Cutelaba, but the judges saw the last thing. They went 2-1. But either way, Cutelaba gets the win. He was the guy on this card that needed a win the most after the 2 losses to Ankalaev and then the draw to Jacoby. He was in mighty need of a win because if he would have lost, he would have been 0-3-1. He would have been on the verge of either being cut or getting moved down the division even more. But this kind of keeps him afloat. He wins this matchup against a guy who just lost to Anthony Smith. So he had a shot against the top 10 guy. So it gives him a shot maybe at fighting a guy in the 10 to 15 range now, considering the fact. And like looking at it right there, like that there's options for him to fight in that light heavyweight division. Like Jamal Hill, he's booked. I believe Serkinov is booked.
Yeah.
And even I think Craig might be booked. But like
I haven't
a guy
seen
like
anything for Craig. I think he is free at the moment.
He was supposed to fight, and then his opponent got hurt. So maybe he could fight Craig.
I was thinking Craig might be a good one.
Johnny Walker is fighting Santos in a couple weeks in the main event on fight night. So I don't think it's him. Is Crute scheduled?
Crute is fighting Jamal Hill, actually.
Okay, so you got that 14-15. Yeah. So maybe you have him fight Paul Craig. It is a step. It is a step up to where it's another grappler. But this guy is one of the best at grappling and submissions. So that represents something different than Devin Clark, who's just wrestling. This guy can grapple with you, clinch up with you. He can kind of try and limit to what you can do. And he's no slouch on his feet. Like, he's not the best at striking, but he can strike with you. He's been able to knock out guys. So I think that would be a good test for him. In the top 15, where it's above there, so it's a little bit above where you expect him to fight, but it's a challenge to where Cutelaba would have the advantage striking wise. It's just that he would have to deal with the grappling version of Paul Craig, who just got that great submission victory a couple months ago.
Destruction.
Yeah.
Jesus, poor Jamal Hill. Which, I mean, he's already turning around ready to fight again, which is fucking nuts to me, but whatever. But what's probably going to happen is Cutelaba and Clark will probably switch places in the rankings. Like, Clark is in that like 15 to 20 range, and Cutelaba is like in the upper 20s. They'll probably flip-flop. So it'll put him within spitting distance of the top 15. That's why I like the idea of the Paul Craig matchup. Gets him a shot into the top 15, but Paul Craig's a tough son of a bitch. Like, even with the striking, he's got power because he's a big guy. He's just not very refined. But even then, he's still got a chin on him. He can still take a shit ton of punishment, even though he's not really got that much of a striking background. And his grappling is best in the division.
It's amazing. You saw how he got that submission out of nowhere on Jamal Hill. Like, he just did it like that, standing up. And that's going to present something. So if Cutelaba can pace himself like he did, he's going to be a formidable opponent. It's just that when he kind of gets out of hand and then he goes from pacing himself to just like turbo mode, that's when he kills himself in fights. But I'm like, it's good for him. Even though he didn't get that knockout that he wanted, he did get that performance where he was able to show like a good overall performance. I think this kind of worked out better for him because then he was able to better himself by stretching it out, showing that he can do all 3 rounds and not necessarily tire himself out. Yeah. Kind of like how Phil Hawes did it before in his last fight.
Right.
Just show that you're more than just a 1-round fighter.
Yeah, no, I think that was really important, especially because that's all he's ever been is 1 round. And then after that 1 round, if you can survive, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about him anymore.
And now fighters have to kind of game plan for that now. Before they could just game plan for 1 round and then boom. Yeah. Now they're going to have more to think about with you moving forward.
Right. And I mean, Cutelaba does have a Sambo background. He's got a combat Sambo background. He just would use it all up in the first round. So you never really got to see much because there's only so much you can do in 5 minutes. Right. And he does like to stand up. He does like to trade because he's a big guy and he's got a lot of power. So he never had a chance to really showcase that Sambo like he did in this fight because of how long the fight went. So, yeah, I mean, if he can keep this discipline, keep this pace that he has to, maintain across a fight going forward and using that as the default instead of the balls to the wall strategy and trying to get it all done in the first, I think that's going to serve him in the long run. I think that's going to give him a lot more time to kind of flesh out the weaker parts of his game and really develop into a formidable fighter in this whole division, which is that's why I like the Paul Craig matchup, because that would be a real challenge for him. I'd also like maybe if you see the winner of Jamal Hill and Jimmy Crute, they get Cutelaba after that's all settled. That might be interesting. I did like Jimmy Crute matchup first, but then I saw he was booked. So I was like, well, fuck it. If Jamal Hill can beat Jimmy Crute, fucking give him Cutelaba, see how he does. I think that would be an interesting matchup too.
Yeah.
So like anywhere in that like 12 to 15 range would be awesome. But I think he has a real shot at any of those guys and moving on up into, the top 15 of the division, which I think that's always kind of what he's wanted, but he hasn't had, the discipline to not shoot everything out at the first round and then kill yourself for the other 2. But now that he's figured out that, I think he could be a real force to be reckoned with in this division. As far as Clark goes, I don't know. I feel like he's kind of capped at that 15 line. Like he never quite breaks through, which is why I think they're probably going to use him to test an up and comer, right? Like have him kind of fight up, but not really fight up. They're kind of anticipating he'll lose. Maybe give him Da Un Jung, who right now is 3-0-1 in the UFC. So they'll probably do a matchup like that where they kind of use him to test a newcomer, see how they do, use him as like a gatekeeper of sorts. But I mean, I don't see him breaking into the top 15 anytime soon.
Nope. But let's move on from the co-main event to the main event of the evening. We had a light heavyweight matchup once again. We had Anthony Smith defeat Ryan Spann by first round submission. Anthony Smith moves to 36-16, whereas Ryan Spann falls to 19-7. What did you take from this main event matchup?
And this was another short and sweet matchup that looked pretty good for Anthony Smith. It definitely came out and let everybody know that, hey, you know what? I'm still here and I still want that belt. It was 1 round and Spann started out pretty strong. Stand-up looked good. He was backing Smith up with some of his shots, but then Smith came back with a huge counter shot, knocked Spann down, dominated him in the grappling for a second. Then he attempted that arm bar, which didn't work out, but Spann was able to counter it, kind of spin out, work back to his knees, and then from there work up to his feet for a guillotine choke attempt. That didn't work either. Spann stopped the hands from closing, and instead he just kind of lifted that arm out and then just kind of stood up and slipped out. It was clear that Spann's thing is not grappling at all.
No.
Then after they got back to the feet, you had Smith wobble Spann a couple of times in the stand-up with some solid punches to the head. Then he knocked him down. Once they got kind of in a bit of a scramble, you saw Smith take back control. And then once he got on the back, it was just a matter of time until he worked under the chin and choked out Spann via rear naked choke. Pretty cut and dry. That's it. That was the whole round. It was almost over almost as soon as it began. The entire round lasted 3 minutes and 47 seconds. So it didn't take too long for Smith to put this one away.
And what just got me was like going into the fight, I was like, okay, Ryan Spann has holes, but this is a perfect matchup for him stylistic wise to steal victory against a guy in the top 10 because Anthony Smith struggles against wrestlers. Like his defense, defending the takedowns, not as good. And then he takes a lot of damage. Like his striking defense is not good. So I thought maybe Spann could come in and come out with a victory where he like can sneak out the first couple rounds by wrestling. He might lose a round or two because he starts to tire out, but then like he got that takedown that I thought he was going to do, but instead of taking him down, he carried him across the cage for no reason at all. Like,
and he didn't set him down. He didn't even take him down. He just set him back down. What the fuck was that?
Like throw him on the ground and then get that, and then get the top guard going, because that's where you win most of your fights is by the ground and pound. That's what he's doing. He gets guys down and then he ground and pounds them. And Anthony Smith doesn't even try to get up half the time. He just takes the damage. And he would have been open, but no, he carries him, places him down very gently, which I don't know. I'm still flabbergasted by that. And then he starts throwing shots at him, and then he allowed Anthony Smith to just turn around and pop him with the left hook. And that did him in every single time he went to get something going. Anthony Smith would just throw that left hook, and it'd stun him every single time. And that's how each submission opening would come into play, was when he would get stunned. He'd go right down and it'd happen again. And he'd get up from submission, pop him again, reshuffle into the different submission. It's just like clockwork. And I'm just like, you gave yourself away once you didn't slam him on the ground with the takedown. Once he got him up and then just placed him down, I was like, okay, Anthony Smith's winning now, because like all you had to do is take him down. You had a golden opportunity and you blew it. And Anthony Smith took advantage of it and wound him. It took a minute and a half after that to get him to submit, but he finally got him with the choke upside down. And then afterwards, he had that melee where he was like, "Put respect on my name," or
they were shouting at each other. Yeah.
And then you look at Spann, he goes over, "I'm going to shake his hand. I'm going to shake his hand." And then you see him, okay. And then they wound up doing good afterwards. I don't know what that was about. I hope it wasn't about him not looking at him in the beginning of the fight, because that's how he always stands before a fight and then for face-offs. But
we'll never know, because they were like, Anthony Smith, what was that about? And then he was like, oh, and then he went off on this tangent that they had to mute out. And then all you heard him say was, oh, Anthony Smith sucks. And then they muted out the rest too. So who fucking knows what happened?
I don't know who to put in to pit him against now, because he's at that 6th spot. He's not going to move up because he fought 11th ranked Spann. You got Santos, who is booked against Johnny Walker. Yeah. The only guy that I can think of, there's 2 guys that come to my mind. First is Dominic Reyes.
Yeah, I had that one.
And then there's a guy like maybe Magomed Ankalaev, who's still down, but is up there to where he can challenge him. And because he's one of the guys there that you're looking at as possible title contender there. So maybe you can slot him against that. But other than that, there's not many choices besides that.
Well, Smith actually called out Alexander Rakic. He wants Rakic because Rakic is inactive. He's not booked. And he's just kind of sitting around. He's not really – I mean, he's kind of in that conversation for a title shot. But since he hasn't fought in a while, it's like, where does he fall in line? You know what I mean? He hasn't had any recent victories that would be like, oh, yeah, that's clearly the guy we want next. And so that's what Anthony Smith was saying. He says, I want Rakic, because he hasn't been doing anything. So fuck it. Let me fight him and, take his spot. And then I'll be on the conversation for that title contention. And I thought, if that doesn't work out, then give him Dominic Reyes, because Dominic Reyes is one of those guys who's always in the title shot conversation. And then he gets his shot and then he shits the bed like every time. So I think that would be a good kind of litmus test to see if Anthony Smith is championship material. give him Dominic Reyes, see how he does. And if he beats Dominic Reyes, well, then he'll be in the top 5. I think he'll be ranked number 5 at that point.
Because right now you got Prochaska, who it looks like he's been waiting for a shot, but then you got a guy like Rakic who's like, fight me, why are we wait? Like, I think I should get the shot over you.
Rakic actually did say when Anthony Smith called him out, he said, I want Rakic. Rakic tweeted, I'm free in December. So that might happen.
It might, because he might be tired of waiting for Prochaska, who is stating that he's waiting for a title shot.
Yeah.
So it could happen, yeah.
So that might be an option. That might be something that's on the table. I wonder how he would do against a Yuri Prochaska, because Yuri Prochaska is not actually booked right now. He is free. So that is a matchup.
He put himself as the alternate for next week for next month's to share Jovic fight, which is probably why he didn't take a fight with Rakic, because he's leaving himself open just in case.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I don't know how Anthony Smith would do against Yuri Prochaska anyway. So
I don't think he would do well, because I think
Prochaska's pretty fucking powerful.
He takes too much damage, and those leg kicks by Prochaska are vicious. And
I think he would just make the mistake of trying to stand and trade with Prochaska. I think that's the mistake he would make, because that's the mistake Dominic Reyes made. Yeah. Didn't work out for him.
Yeah.
Oof, man. I don't know. I feel like Anthony Smith kind of belongs in that top 5 somewhere. Like, there's a matchup where you could make it happen, but I'm not sure if he'll ever really get the title. Because then, let's say you got the Jovic Glover Teixeira fight, right? One of those two guys takes the title, and then Yuri Prochaska gets the winner and probably beats the shit out of him.
Yeah.
Any one of those 3 guys could easily beat Anthony Smith. Teixeira, Jovic, or Prochaska could all beat the shit out of him. So, I mean, realistically, I think his chances at the belt are pretty fucking slim.
The one thing that's always going to do in Anthony Smith is taking in too much damage, because he's a guy that can dish it out, but then he can take it on, but he takes on too much. So it's like he'll be the guy that dishes out 80 strikes, but then he'll take in 110.
Yeah.
And he'll lose just every round because he's not doing enough, because he doesn't defend the shots too much, which is probably why his nickname is Lionheart, because he takes fucking everything and kitchen sink, and somehow he survives every time. He even lost 2 teeth fighting Glover Teixeira before he lost that fight.
Right.
So that's just how he is. Like, I think he can move all the way up to maybe at highest number 3 now, but these new guys, like, I wouldn't say Jovic is new, but you got him as champ, but you got these new guys like Rakic and Prochaska, which I think are just going to be too quick for him. And then they're like kind of the new age light heavyweight, whereas guys like Teixeira, Smith, and Reyes are more like the older style, which is crazy, because the past couple of fights have been on what we've seen for Reyes, because Reyes has stepped it up until these last 2 losses. He's stepped it up to a whole new level, and he's been around a while. Like, you're starting to see John Jones leaving the division, and now you got 3 or 4 old stays, but now you got all these new stays coming right in to forming a really competitive light heavyweight division, even with Jones leaving, which is kind of crazy. Like, I say that every single time, how it kind of took John Jones leaving to better the division.
I mean, you just got a lot of really talented new blood. You've got, obviously Prochaska, Rakic, we talked about, but Ankalaev, I think, is another person in that conversation who is not mentioned enough. I feel like he's going to be in title contention pretty soon. He's looking really fucking good. I really like Ankalaev, and I think
I look at these matchups and I'm like, I wish John Jones would have stayed. Could you imagine like a John Jones against a Yuri Prochaska, or John Jones, or like a John Jones against a Magomed Ankalaev?
Right. I think because Prochaska actually said that he thinks his real toughest opponent is John Jones, which makes me think if he does, let's say he beats Jovic, he might actually want to move up to heavyweight just to fight John Jones. So we might get to see
We just
that
won't
fight at
know
some
because
point.
John Jones hasn't fought in 2 years.
Yeah, he just has to actually fight, and then we might see it. So, God damn.
But other than that, we'll wrap things up for tonight's UFC Fight Night Anthony Smith versus Ryan Smith recap show. I thank you guys for tuning in for our first live show in the last 2 months. We're going to get back on the regular with these live shows. But you can check us out on every Monday night at 9 o'clock now on the Sports Box, or you can check us out on the YouTube channel on Fighters First. Of course, all you got to do is go to YouTube, type in Fighters First on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button, and then don't forget to like the video. Check out all of our merch at FightersFirst.shop. And then, do you have anything else before we get going?
Nah, not too much. I'm just looking forward to this this big pay-per-view card we got this week.
I know.
It's gonna be a banger. Holy shit.
We got we got 2 title fights. One is Brian Ortega against Alexander Volkanovski. You know, we've been talking about the Ultimate Fighter the past 2 months, and we're finally going to get the culmination of the coaches fighting each other, which were 2 nice stylistic matchups. And then we got Lauren Murphy fighting Shevchenko. And then we even have a 5-round third fight between Nick Diaz.
Why do they keep doing that? What the fuck? It's not. There's no reason for 5 rounds. But
Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler. I think it's 20 years in the making since the last fight.
17 years. Yeah, they were saying it's 17
it's going to be that's going to be interesting. And it's a stacked card when the 4th fight on it is Curtis Blades going up against Jorginho Rosenstruck, which is going to be a nice heavyweight battle.
Oh yeah,
right there. So things are stacked when they're at the lower end of the totem pole.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a banger of a card. Even the prelims fights look really interesting. You got Chris Daukaus fighting again against, what's his name? That guy.
This is the 3rd time it was moved. It was supposed to be in August, beginning of August. Then they moved it to the end of August, and then they had to move it again to the end of September. So it's about time we get this fight going.
Finally, we're going to see it. But that should be pretty good. We were talking about following Dana White's Contender Series, but if you're watching the fights, they actually go over all the contract winners. Yeah. So it's kind of redundant, so we probably won't do that. But instead, we'll just wait around for the next season of Ultimate Fighter, which they'll probably have as soon as Contender Series ends. So
that's how the loop goes. They do Ultimate Fighter, then they do Contender Series, then do Ultimate Fighter again. From what I hear, they're looking to do it by January. They'll finish this up probably by, I'm going to say, around November, and then they'll have like a month or 2 around the holidays to just take a break and then get started on the new season in January.
So we got that to look forward to. It should be fun.
So keep a lookout for that. But like I said, next week is the pay-per-view. Then we have a couple of fight nights in October before those double banger pay-per-views in Fight Island and in Madison Square Garden, and then Showtime from there. So we're gonna get a big clear picture of some of these divisions moving forward. I'm looking forward to next week. So I'm gonna go out right now and say I think Ortega picks up the victory. And then I think Shevchenko wins easily.
It's going to be a blowout.
I don't even have to look at notes or anything. I got her winning that. So
holy shit! The betting odds are 1,250 to plus 750. Lauren Murphy.
And then
they should be.
And then I'm going to go with Nick Diaz against Robbie Lawler because both these guys haven't fought, so it's kind of hard to pick. But they asked Nick Diaz about how he trash talks, and he says that he's done doing it because now he's in the mind of training the younger fighters now. Yeah. So I think he's going to come in more polished and ready. which is crazy to think because you think of them, you think of trash talking. So
right.
I'm gonna have my eyes glued on just him to see how he is reaction wise and everything. If he starts to go back to that trash talking, or if it's like a brand new Nick Diaz. And then I think I'm gonna go Curtis Blades. I want to say Rosenstruck because his power punching, but I think you're gonna see more so of Curtis Blades dominating with the wrestling again. I just have a feeling of that. And I feel like he's going to try and be more disciplined this time after that, the way he lost to Derek Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, I like Curtis Blades on that matchup just because he's got more mobility. Yeah. He's got a more well-rounded skill set. Rosenstruck, he's not out of shape, but he's not in as good of shape as Curtis Blades is. And it's kind of the same problem you had with Derek Lewis versus Cyril Gane, right? Really, it was the fact that Cyril Gane is in really, really good shape, and Curtis Blades just eventually couldn't keep up. And that's really what killed him. And I think that's probably going to be what happens here with Rosenstruck, is he's just not in as good of shape as Blades. And, 15 minutes doesn't seem like a long time, but it wears on you pretty quick. And if you can't go the distance, then, it's whoever breaks first. And I think Curtis Blades is better set up to make that journey. We've also got Jessica Andrade versus Catalina Calvillo.
Cynthia Calvillo.
Cynthia. Okay, I can't read for shit. Yeah. Obviously, Andrade is the betting favorite because she's going to win. No shit. She's like, you got Shevchenko, who's the champ, and then below that you've got Andrade, who just like sits on the number one spot for a while. I don't think I
got Andrade, but don't be shocked if somehow she loses to Calvillo. I just think stylistically wise, it's going to make for a good fight. I still have Andrade winning though.
Yeah.
But if she were to lose, don't be shocked.
Yeah.
Before we get going, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsors. First one is 99 Jersey. Use promo code SportsBoxShow20 at checkout to receive 20% off your next purchase. Then we got Oddsjam. All you got to do is go to the link in the bio, click the link, sign up, and watch as you never miss a bet again. And lastly, we got High Tide Herbal. Use promo code CageMyIQ10 at checkout to receive 10% off your next purchase. High Tide Herbal is a company owned by coaches and athletes who specialize in speedy recovery. They use CBD oil in all their products, and then their goal is to help athletes recover faster. So once again, use promo code CageMyIQ10 at checkout to receive 10% off your next purchase. But that'll wrap things up. We'll be back next Monday to recap the UFC pay-per-view this Saturday. So definitely tune in for that. Let us know what you think of that pay-per-view. Let's get in the comments section and give your fight reactions on there so we can interact with you, the fans. But once again, I'm your host, D-Bake. This is my co-host, Miles Long. And we will talk to you guys next week.
See you
talk to you guys later.
Thank you for watching this episode of Cage My IQ on the Sports Box. Please remember to follow us on all of our social media outlets. On Facebook at Sportsbox Show, Twitter at Sportsbox Show, Instagram at The Sportsbox Show. Find us on YouTube and join Outside the Box, our Facebook sports discussion group. The Sports Box is brought to you by our sponsor, Showcase Sports in Hamilton. Showcase Sports for the elite athlete. And also our friends over at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use promo code THEBOX at sign up for 10 free points. Thank you for joining us.